I'm Bill Limmer, one of the pastors here at Victory, and again today we have Karen Fischer with us from Christian Family Solutions, a licensed professional counselor. Thanks again, Karen. It's so great to have you. You've been leading us and teaching us a whole lot. Super beneficial. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about depression. And so what does depression tell us?
What does depression tell us? So we've been talking about all these different emotions. And again, I'm going to stump you here, right? Because depression is not an emotion. It is a state of being. So from a psychological standpoint, it's a state of being. Typically, the emotion that we see with it is sadness. Although sometimes we'll see other ones, like anger, for example, usually in like teenage boys, right? One of the big emotions that shows us that a person might be struggling with that state of mind called depression could be anger. But for most of it, it's sadness. And sadness, drives that state of being that depression becomes. So, and sadness comes in a lot of forms: loss, grief, different things that might provoke that. But yeah, it's really sadness probably leading to that state of depression.
All right. So so depression's really not an emotion then.
You can feel down, right? And we use the terms sort of interchangeably. From a clinical standpoint, though, they're very different. So I might say someone's depressed or down in just the regular vernacular, but from a clinical standpoint, there's a lot of criteria and different things we're looking for to use that term, clinically depressed.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what type of symptoms do most people exhibit?
Yeah. So there's a particular set of criteria that we follow, written in a book called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's about 900 pages long. You don't have to know that. But what's interesting about it is it categorizes things for us so that we can kind of go through a labyrinth of things and sort of know what we're dealing with, especially if we're going to use medications to help someone. So with major depressive disorder, which is the most diagnosed depressive disorder among the 20-some that there are, major depressive disorder has some characteristics. Two things that you must have are a lack of pleasure in things for more than 2 weeks. So every day for more than 2 weeks, no pleasure in activities. And this feeling that things can't improve. So you have to have those two. And then there's a list of other, of course, sort of a la carte symptoms that people have. And some have more than others. Some have them in more severity than others. But all the way along, those two things have to be present for that 2-week period or more consecutively.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps kind of frame it.
Good. Excellent. So how would you help yourself if you feel that way?
That's so hard. It all depends on what the symptoms are, that you're experiencing. And for some people, it's just sort of trying to figure out, how do I get outside of myself a little more? When you're really depressed, your brain kind of stops functioning the way that it's designed to. Sometimes I'll say, it's unfortunate that your brain is the only organ with a mind of its own, right? If your brain isn't working well, it's hard for your mind to make sense of things or to see things differently, right? So it's hard to do on your own. But if you can, the thing to think about is, how could I get going and get doing things that are opposite to what my brain is telling me? If I'm in a depressed state or my brain is depressed, it'll tell me a lot of things to do, like not get out of bed, not shower, not return phone calls, not interact with people. And that's probably a sign that you should do the complete opposite.
Right.
Go ahead, take the shower, put your jeans and your shirt on and go get the mail. Even if it's little things, they start to stack up and your brain starts to look at it and go, oh, I guess we can do things I didn't think we could. We call it self-activation, this idea that I can activate outside myself, and then my brain will react and say, okay, I guess we're doing better. So even those little things can start to add up. So those are important.
Very good. How would you help someone who is really struggling with depression and maybe even a deep depression?
Yeah. It's hard to be depressed. Sometimes I think it's just as hard to love people who struggle with depression, because if you haven't experienced it or you don't experience it the way that they do, it's hard to relate. It's hard to understand how you can't get out of bed and get the mail. Or even at its worst, it's hard to understand how you'd get to a point where you don't want to wake up and you don't want to live anymore, right? So helping people who are struggling with that takes a combination of things. One is, I always encourage people who are struggling to explain it as best they can to their loved ones. What is it like for you? You know, so you might ask them, would you be able to sit down and tell me more? You know, what is it like for you? What are the things that you're experiencing? I want to understand, right? The trick with that then is to just understand, not offer advice, and to sit back and kind of just ask, what could I do? What would be helpful to you? For some people, you know, we encourage them to be very specific with their loved ones. What can they do? Because they feel very helpless too. If you've been on the other side of that with somebody who's struggling with depression, you feel helpless because there's nothing that seemingly is going to, you know, increase their ability. So you want to know, is there something I could do? And so hopefully they're going to tell you, yes, if you don't hear from me in 3 days, please text me. Or if you could send me that encouraging Bible verse every day, I'd really appreciate that, right? So you can offer, you can say, would this be helpful? Or you can just ask, what could I be doing? And then I think the last thing is to really question to the point that you understand their safety. And if you're in a position where they are saying to you, I am not safe, I think about hurting or killing myself, it's time to pick up the phone. Because by that point, their brain can't rescue them, right? It all looks very gray and hopeless. And we want to be able to intervene with the tools that we're talking about in a little bit more detail, get somebody with professional eyes on them, and really make sure that they're in a safe place. So don't be afraid to ask that question. I think that's really important, and it shows that you care about their well-being.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I've looked at depression as I would call a liar. And so how do you help people stop believing the lies?
Yeah. So we have two sides of our brain. We have the rational side and the emotional side. When you're depressed, your emotional side is the one that's winning, right? And the emotion of that sadness that's so heavy or whatever it is has diminished all of your rational capabilities. You can't see past that. Maybe what you're talking about is something under resilience that we call positive outlook of the future, that people who bounce back well from difficulty can see past now. So a lot of times I'm not going to argue with people. At that point, you feel the way you feel. To you, the world is very dark at this moment and seems insurmountable, understandable. Know that in the human condition, we are 100% sinner, 100% saint in our sinner bodies that are damaged from the beginning of time now. We will often think that we don't want to be here. And that's a common human experience. And that's okay. What are we going to do to see past that, though? What are we going to do to see past the fact that you're living in a broken brain? What can we do to move past and over that and see a positive image of the future? I think sometimes the easiest way to do that is look backwards. Have you felt something similar in the past? And did you get past that? And sometimes they can help you see that. They can explain that. They can say, yep, boy, I remember high school. Man, it was hard. You know, I really got bullied and it was difficult, but then I got to college and it went really well. Perfect, right? That's that positive image of the future to propel you past the now. So that might be another way to look at it rather than argue.
Right.
You know, because they can't get their head around it.
Right. And arguing just makes the person feel worse.
They do. Right. Because they do want to feel better. They just don't believe they can.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You bet.